Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today we're going to talk about the Ziigaat Arete. Now, the Arete came from another YouTuber called Fresh Reviews. If you don't know who he is, I'll have a link in the description below, but he reviews a lot of gaming and audio products, audio more in the context and focus of gaming, but he covers a wide variety of things. I like him as a reviewer and as a person. We've spoken privately in the past, and the whole premise and why this was created is because when we play Apex together, he thinks I suck. And he called me one day, he's like, Joe, we got to find some solution here because you're just not pulling your weight. He's basically carrying a bag of bricks on him and I'm just sitting here, trying to figure out what's going on. So that's where the Arete came, because he was trying to help me and we're like, hey, why not make it public? No, I'm just kidding. It had nothing to do with me, but I am happy to be reviewing it. I do speak to him privately on X and Discord from time to time, and he's a really nice person. So I want to express this now because you will likely see some videos in the future of he and I working together where, when the content aligns and there's the right reason to. But I don't want that relationship to make people think I have a bias here. I will express what I like and dislike about this product, which I do with every product I buy, whether I review, whether I purchased it, or if it was sent to me for review. So let's start with the basics. Now this is a hybrid IEM. It uses a biocellulose dynamic driver for the base, and then it uses 4 balanced armatures for the mids and upper frequencies. This is known as a hybrid when you have 2 different driver technologies. It doesn't always guarantee it's going to sound a certain way, but this is a very common driver arrangement in this price range, being $250 with this particular product. Now these are really easy to drive. They are rated at 9 ohms at 1000 hertz for impedance. That's incredibly low, and that will affect the sound quality based off what you connect it to. In a simple sense, you can connect this to an Xbox controller or a PS5 controller, no problem, or something as simple as a little $10 Apple dongle, and that's really all you need. If you go with something more extreme, this is a Bluetooth DAC that I like to use from X Duo. It's the XB2 balanced. I like this because it doesn't do anything to the sound. It's just a really powerful, clean Bluetooth DAC. So I use this for like on-the-go testing when I'm walking around the house. And then I went all the way up to something like the FiO K11, which I like a lot. And then this is the FiO K19, which is over $1,000 and completely overkill. You don't need any of that to get the most out of it. I do recommend something like an Apple dongle, because if you connect this to your computer tower, for example, it will not sound as good. It really does negatively impact the sound. So just buy a cheap dongle and be on your merry way. So let's talk about what's included in the box aside from these IEMs. Now it does come with a little travel case with a zipper. The zipper is honestly quite stiff. Not a huge fan of this zipper, but I do like the case shape because it's flatter and more square than a lot of other IEM cases. This is typically what I see in the mid-range space. You have a more rectangular box that's thicker. It's not really pocket friendly, but it does, hold and present things quite nice. This one's going to look a little bit different, but I actually think because it's flatter, it's more useful and I can fit it in more places. I just wish the zipper was a little bit nicer. Now, it of course comes with a cable and tips, and this is to me my biggest, I don't want to say detractor, but the things I'm least happy about. These particular tips, because of the size and shape on the mediums and the large, I never got a great seal in my ear. Now I know like my right ear canal is slightly larger than my left, and I usually have to mix and match tips depending on the IEM and what tips are included. So I want to start by saying this because tips make such a massive impact on sound quality with IEM. You may think you have a good seal, but if it sounds like really detached and almost out of phase, or you're lacking a lot of bass depth, there's a really good chance you have a leak. You can have a small leak and it'll make a big difference on the sound. These particular tips, if I went with the larger one, they're very easy to crinkle. This like little plasticky rubber stuff on the outside of the tip, it's very, very soft, and I couldn't maintain a seal with my ear. I do like that they came with memory foam, and for how these are set up, I think the memory foam, these little Comply foam tips here, will be nicer to use as far as maintaining a seal and getting the bass performance you're likely looking for, but I have a skin reaction to memory foam tips. I can't really use them. Enter stage right, and you have the tips that I purchased and use on a lot of IEMs. This is the Duno SNS tips. I'll probably never say that name right, but these are more square. You can see they have a very different shape to them. And to me, this was a game changer because it gives me some of the benefits that I like with the memory foam tips, but without the skin irritation, and it completely transformed the sound quality of this. I honestly thought that there was something going on because I do listen and game with them before I measure stuff, And when I first tried it, I was like, man, this is super bass light. And it was just because one of the tips kept crinkling. I couldn't maintain a seal. So play around with tips. If you don't like the tips that are included and you don't have your own collection, I'll have a link in the description below to give these a shot. They do make them in a 3-pack that comes with small, medium, large. So if you have the same issue I have, you might need medium for one ear and large for the other, for example, or small, medium, whatever it may be. But that like universal pack will help you really dial it in and get the right sound. And I think that's what really let these shine. Now, I don't mind the cable. This is a black braided cable and it matches the design. I mean, this is a dark IEM and it has a really gorgeous texture on the faceplate. But so I like that they went with black. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also like that it's very easy to discern which side is which, because the vent on each IEM shell is red and blue. So all you have to do is match up the appropriate plug here, and it makes it pretty easy to dial in. Now, these are just standard 2-pin. You can buy any cable you want. In fact, as much as I think the cable's decent, I personally don't use this cable too much, and it's for a couple reasons. The choke thing on top is super loose. You can see that it literally falls on its own, so I think this is used more for just cable tying, but it doesn't always stay, and sometimes it kind of misaligns. And you can see it has kind of a weird memory effect with the cable. It doesn't like to stay as straight, and this cable likes to tangle more than many of my others. So I'm not a huge fan of the included accessories. We will, tie that into how I think the overall package value is when you consider the sound quality performance. But as far as the cable goes, I personally would just buy new tips and maybe buy a new cable. You don't have to buy something expensive, just like the Linsol Triple N cable. That one is, I think, like 20 or 25 bucks, and to me will kind of transform your ownership experience. So something to consider. As far as comfort goes, with IEMs, a lot of time there's only a couple basic things to look at. It's the shell shape and size, and then the tip bore. Obviously, you want to make sure you have the right tip itself, but the bore of like the nozzle that comes out of the IEM, sometimes it could be too thick for some people. Now, these are lightweight enough. The shell isn't so big that it feels awkward. And the hooks, even though I'm not a huge fan of the cable, the hooks work well for my ear shape. They provide just enough security and stability, but I don't have any like discomforts there. So I can wear these for a decent period of time. Again, once I switched to the appropriate tip. And once you're wearing it, the cable issues with like having that memory effect, it becomes less of a problem. No real microphonics issues either. Now, I'm really fortunate to have a lot of IEMs show up recently to help with comparisons for other reviews, measurements, and future video content. And had this not have happened, I never would have known this. But if you look at the Arete on the right, this is actually a different IEM. This is the Yanyan Canon 2, which is about $380 MSRP. And it turns out it is the exact same shell. They even print the model and serial number the same exact way on the IEM shell. The pin layout is the same. Everything about this, they are basically clones of each other. And you can see even the vent is the same. Now, the Yanyan Canon 2 is a more expensive IEM, and you actually have two little switches that affect the tuning. But obviously, they have a different faceplate. I think they're both very pretty in their own way. It's just kind of funny. I think the shape of the Arete is actually quite nice. This particular IEM design works well for my ear, but shape can make a big difference for what's comfortable for you and what isn't. Now, I mentioned bore size also impacting comfort, and I'm pleased to say the Arete actually has a pretty small bore. The inside part is about 5.4 millimeters, and the lip is just about 6 millimeters, which is slightly smaller than the average that I see on a lot of hybrid arrangements. Usually you get to like 6.2 on the lip and 5.8 on the bore, somewhere around there. So this being average to slightly below average is really nice because this has a big difference with comfort. I do like the nozzle shape. I like that it has a lip because it keeps the tips more secure, but at the same time, even with the lip, the bore size isn't so big that it's causing like discomfort issues for me. Now, when we look at sound quality, there's a few things to consider. I'm going to start with the measured side, which uses an IEC 711 coupler clone, and it takes my opinion out of it, but you can use it to compare against other IEMs I've measured. You don't always want to compare it to other people's measurements because they don't have the same rig. The charts won't always line up. It's a different simulation model, and it's not always A to A in terms of comparisons. But having said that, if you look at the sound signature of the Arete, it's fairly close to Harman compliant on the bass to mid-range, which the bass is on the left-hand side here. relatively flat in the mid-range. You'd see a little bit of emphasis in 1 to 2K, and then it's recessed. Now, I'm saying this just in comparison to the Harman curve. This does not mean it's not detailed. It also doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. Not everything should be tuned to Harman, because one, not everyone wants a Harman tuned IEM. And even if you did, it may not work as well for you. So I think the big takeaway is to kind of understand what kind of sound signature you're looking for or what you feel is lacking, and see based off measurements if anything comes close. Now, the measurements don't mean 100% it's going to sound a certain way either. The way you interpret it, and there's other characteristics like distortion and things like that that can also vary. Now, I want to show you something really important with this. I mentioned the fact that these have very low impedance. When you hook this up to a higher output impedance, it can change the sound profile. That's because whenever you have something this low, chances are inside you have the balanced armature drivers, which have one impedance, then the dynamic driver has a different one. Let's say the dynamic driver is 32 ohms, but the BAs are only 10 ohms. If you add a impedance adapter or high output impedance, like connecting to the back of your motherboard, which is 80 plus ohms of output impedance, that will mean this will have more bass just by plugging that in. Now, to simulate that, I connected this to a 10 ohm output impedance device. This is basically a impedance adapter, and you can see that it boosted the bass a bit. If I go to my inspector at the top here, you're looking at about a 3 decibel lift, while also pulling some of the upper frequencies down just a little bit. So as you increase impedance, let's say you connect this to the Creative GC7 game deck because you want it for gaming, or the back of your computer, and you're like, man, this sounds a little bit muddy and bassier than I expected, not as detailed. That's likely because of that. So again, consider something like a $10 Apple dongle adapter, or something cheap that is known to have low output impedance. That'll give you better sonic performance for something like this. Now, I do want to compare it to a few other IEMs because there's some really cool stuff here, and I want to tie this in. Now, the Yanyan Canon 2, I already showed you the shell design. I love the Canon 2. It's actually one of my favorite sub $500 IEMs right now. I'll be reviewing that later, but the Canon 2 is a little bit warmer sounding. You can see that much more emphasis in the upper bass region, and also a little bit more emphasis as you approach like 3K and up. Now, it doesn't have the same forwardness from 1 to 2K. And I can tell you, just to simplify all of this, the Yanyan Canon 2 is 380 versus 250. And I think the overall sound quality is better for me for music primarily. There was no audible difference in performance for gaming. I didn't feel like I was more competitive with the Canon 2, but I just want to show you another IEM because we started with that shell design. Now, the big one is a new IEM or newer IEM from Elysian Acoustic Labs, and that is the Pilgrim. They are so neck and neck in terms of sound profile with the Arete. That is $400, this IEM. I mean, it's a gorgeous IEM. If you look at it from the top and you see this metallic shell, it's really nice quality. It's built well. The cable is gorgeous. It's a little bit shorter, but it's a really nice wire. You're paying a bit more for some of the build quality, in my opinion, and the included accessories, but the sound quality is very similar. These actually have a slightly more recessed bass. It's not as forward or punchy as the Arete. It's a little bit more neutral sounding, and then it also has just a little bit touch less forwardness in the 1 to 2K. I think in terms of how this directly compares in sound quality, the treble's just a little bit smoother, but you also get a little bit less dynamic bass to it. It seems just a little bit stepped back, and if you're chasing more of that stronger bass or emphasized bass, then the Pilgrim may not be your best bet. But I just want to point out, because this uses a similar driver arrangement as well, so the fact that you're getting an Arete for so much less money to get similar technical performance is a pretty big feat on the value side of the Arete. Because Fresh Reviews focuses on a lot of products in the context of gaming, I want to talk about sound quality from a gaming perspective first, and these do a great job at performing in different FPS games. I think the sound signature does work exceptionally well in Apex, which is a lot of what he was targeting. And if you look at my recent Apex Legends EQ video, where I actually made my own EQ target to sound as good as possible for Apex, regardless of what audio product you have, link in the description for that, this gets eerily close in the middle window of frequencies, like your low mid-range all the way up to low treble. That whole curve actually lines up quite well with my target curve. So it's kind of funny that was completely unrelated to the effort of this and what he was doing. We've both been working on this for a while. So I'm pleased to say it aligns better to that curve than most IEMs do in this price range, above or below. And that does translate into gaming performance. Now, the hybrid driver arrangement allows the dynamic driver to handle the bass, and then your mid details or frequencies are going to be handled by those Knowles BA drivers, balanced armature drivers. And the end result of this sound signature is beneficial in two ways. It's resolving, so as the scene gets more complex and you're dealing with more explosions, more things happening at once while you're trying to maintain accuracy of tracking footsteps or important audio cues, this does a really good job at still presenting those details. It's very easy to pinpoint the location of things, and it has a good balance of stage depth, but not being so wide that you lose the preciseness that you want in being able to pinpoint where someone's coming from. The other thing I really like about this sound signature, and I've said this in other reviews in the past, is I like that it's not too forward or emphasized in the upper mid-range and treble. The issue I have is when you get too bright and too sparkly, and you play an FPS game in particular that has shield cracks on Apex, or emptying a mag or shooting a gun in Call of Duty, or almost half the cues in Call of Duty, because I feel like they want you to be deaf, those bright high-frequency noises can cause you to wince or have listening fatigue. It's like a sharp, piercing sound in your ear. And if you have an IEM like the Super Mix, which is incredibly detailed in resolving, I like what it does for the money, but it's too bright for me out of the box. And as the scenes get complex and loud, that's just so sparkly and bright, I have to turn the volume down. Well, when you do that, you are now less sensitive to the footstep noises. You know, when someone's sneaking up on you, because you lowered the volume, you may not hear those important audio cues as much. So I really like the sound tuning here because it's a great balance of details, imaging performance, and not being punishing in any way in the upper frequencies. It's not pushing a lot of treble to cheat your way into details. It's doing it from a pretty cohesive soundstage and driver package overall. Now in Call of Duty, these do have more bass than I would personally prefer. Call of Duty is a very bass heavy game, and anytime you have that, you have to do some EQ. I don't think there's any one audio product out there that just aligns well with a game like Call of Duty and Apex. It's pretty much not possible because the frequencies are different. So I think this does benefit from some EQ regardless, but I do want to say that when you compare it to my all-time favorite bang for your buck, which is here, not that one. These are the Ziigaat EM6Ls. For 110, 120 bucks, I felt like you get really strong diminishing returns as you spend more if you're trying to go in with the expectation of being more competitive for gaming. They just give you almost everything you need. So when you get to something that's essentially double the price of those, well, how much better can you be? This does actually sound like a logical step up to me. In fact, I would probably go from the EM6L straight to the Arete over the new Super Mix 4. The Super Mix 4, I have to EQ those upper frequencies down. It's just a little too sharp for me, but there's no denying it's highly resolving. So if you're okay with doing a lot of custom EQ to find the sound profile, these are still an excellent value, and I do like the cable it comes with. Comfort's still great as well. But as far as out of the box goes, at $250, this is a super strong competitive IEM in this price. And on the note of being competitive for FPS, let's bring out a highly recommended IEM that I got. This is the Kiwi Ear Orchestra Lite. Totally different sound signature. It is much brighter. These shells, I mean, you could see this. It's almost as if the Kiwi Ear Orchestra Lite can eat one of these for breakfast. It is a chunky little IEM, but they are incredibly clear. They're very detailing, but the fitment is terrible for me. I have to switch tips to get them to stay and have any semblance of a seal. If you want bass lean and more upper mid-range and treble, something that's bright, then the Kiwi Ear Orchestra Lite is a better pick for you. These are going to have a warmer, more immersive sound signature, and I think they work better for immersive gaming and music as well over the Kiwi Ear. The other weird thing with the Orchestra Lite is it has more of like a plunger effect. I don't think the vent is as open as something like pretty much all of these other IEMs, which I can wear for a much longer period of time. I don't have the same bore thickness as this, and with the lighter weight and smaller shell, I can just wear them longer, and I think comfort's a really important thing to consider. So keep that in mind. Now, when I listen to tracks from either Radiohead or artists like Muse, that's where the graininess can kind of get exposed a little bit on the upper vocals. Just that little forward bite that 1 to 2K has does shift the tonality a little bit. And something like the Yanyan Canon 2s and the Pilgrims being at $380 to $400, that's why you're paying a little bit more for those. It's not so much that they're more resolving. These pull off very nuanced details extremely well. The imaging performance is fantastic. It's just, if I had to nitpick anything outside of like the included accessories, I think the tonality is just a tad off on the string instruments and vocals. But having said that, because it's not as forward in like the 3 to 4K region, being more recessed, I can listen to a huge variety of genres. And I don't feel like it's like so far off the mark that I can't enjoy it. Honestly, I like this sound signature over a lot of the other IEMs here. I would take the Ziigaat Arete over the Super Mix 4, my EM6L, and the Kiwi Ear Orchestra Lite. The Yanyan Canon 2s and the Elysian Labs Pilgrims being almost $400 is really the first part where I feel like I'm actually getting an upgrade that's worthwhile. So I think that shows how much value they packed into this IEM. So that about wraps up the video. Hopefully you found this helpful and you learned a little bit more about the Arete. And like I said, I will have links in the description below to help you buy or find some of the stuff we talked about. Maybe you liked something else here just based off what I was saying, so I will help you find that. Huge thanks to Fresh Reviews for sending this to me, and Ziigaat for being okay with that. So I'll have links in the description below to support him and visit his channel if you want to see his content. Definitely check him out and subscribe to him if you haven't already. He's an awesome dude. With that being said, thank you so much for watching and making it to the end, and I'll see you at the next one. Bye.